The stranger in the mirror. A man wakes up one day and doesn't recognize his own reflection. Let me tell you about something absolutely terrifying that happened to me last month. It started like any other Tuesday morning. You know how it goes. Alarm blaring at 6:30. That familiar urge to hit snooze just one more time. I remember the sound on this weirdly peaceful atmosphere. Nothing felt the desk. That half-empty glass of water on my niche. I dragged myself out of bed, shuffling toward the bathroom like I'd done thousands of times before. Yawned so clearly now. It's funny how your mind flicked on the bathroom light. And that's when everything changed. That's when my ordinary Tuesday till trying to understand. The mirror above my sink. It wasn't showing me. Well, it was showing someone. But that someone was, you know those moments when you're not quite sure, The face staring back at me belonged to a complete stranger. Dark eyes instead of my blue ones. A spools where my hair should have been brown. When I want to pause here for a second and ask you guys, what would you do in that situation? Because Latique this, no amount of horror movies or weird store. My first reaction, I laughed. Yeah, I actually laughed out loud. Standing there in my bathroom at 6 hysterical laugh you get when your brain simply can. But when I touched the mirror's surface, the panic didn't hit immediately. It crept in slowly like water seeping under a door. I started touch what I felt with what I saw. My hands told me. I ran to my bedroom, grabbed my phone, and opened the front-facing camera. For a second, I felt vishing. But when I looked at the screen, that's when the real fear set in. Because this wasn't just about a mirror anymore. This was about Eve's way we have of seeing ourselves. And let me tell, I called in sick to work that day. How could I not? How do you explain to your co-workers that the person they see isn't the person you see? I spent what we see in the mirror every day. But here's where it gets even weirder. When I finally worked up the courage to leave my apartment, I made a discovery that chilled me to my core. I must have looked exactly as I always had. I even tested it. I stopped at the coffee shop where I'm a regular, where they know me by name. They called me by my name, didn't bat an eye. But when S&D's, but with his face, at this point in the story, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I go to the doctor? Why didn't I? How do you explain something like this without soint? The first doctor I visited, let's call her Dr. Chen, listened patiently as I tried to explain what sits. Checked my vision, asked about my family, showed me the picture. You guessed it. That's when things started getting really interesting. Because while everyone else saw me normally, as starting to notice something about the strange erections, let me just say this. Sometimes the scariest things in life aren't the monsters under our bed, or the guys looking in the mirror and not knowing whose. Remember how I mentioned I was starting to notice something about the stranger in my reflection? Well, Russians seemed to change a fraction of a second Beely watching my reflection. Wouldn't you? The stranger was moving just slightly ahead of me. Not by much, maybe a quarter of a second, but in seeing other things too. Like how sometimes, when one night, about a week after this all started, I had this crazy idea. I set up my phone to record movie mistake, right? But I had to know. The footage in the video, everything looked normal for the first few hours. Just me, sleeping peacefully in my bed. The video sat up in bed, eyes still closed, and that's when I started keeping a journal. I wrote down everything, every little difference I noticed emerging. The stranger in the mirror seemed most ding when I wasn't. Not in a creepy way, but more lie. But here's where it gets really wild. About 2 weeks into this whole thing, I started having these E1 else's life. I had a different job, different arted. The dreams felt so real that sometimes, when I woke up, I wasn't sure which life was actually mine. Al life? Or was I the person in the mirror? Somehow I started researching quantum physics, parallel universes, consciousness transfer, anything that miss in online forums, reading about similar experiential overlap. Others thought it might be a glitch in. Then came the notes. I was cleaning my bathroom one evening when I noticed something strange on the mirror. When I wiped it in there, but they only appeared in the reflect, the handwriting was mine, or his. At this point, I wasn't sure anymore. That night, I did something I'd been avoiding for weeks. I sat down in front of my mirror at exactly with your reflection. Might as well embrace for the first few minutes. Nothing happened. Just me and my not me reflection, staring at each other. Mine didn't. He smiled. That same knowing SMI probably should have been terrified. But honestly, I felt calm. Like this was what was supposed to, and when our fingertips met on the mirror's surface. Well, that's actually where things get complicated. Because what happened next challenges everything-shousness. But before I tell you that part, I want a lot of you suggested that this was all just a mental health issue, a breakdown of some kind. Trust moment when my hand met his on the mirror's surf. What happened next was, well, it was like everything I thought I knew about reality shattered Alanat. When our hands touched, there was this strange sensation, like static electricity, but deeper suddenly, I could hear his thoughts. Or maybe he was me, but not just any version of me. He was me from exactly 1 year in the future. I know how that sounds. Trust me, I do. But hear me out, because this is where everything starts, Macmillan. Something massive was about to happen. So the thing is, he couldn't just tell me directly. Something about temporal paradoxes and the fabric instead he had to show me, to let me piece it, and that's why his expressions always seemed slightly ahead of mine. He was literally experiencing Evarim looking at something else. He was seeing things, but here's the real kicker. Remember those weird hand gestures I made in my sleep? Turns out I was T's across all timelines, all realities. My future? What was coming, you ask? Well, that's the part I'm still not sure I should share. Not because I don't own future can be dangerous. What I can tell Uger's face in the mirror. The morning after our conversation, I woke up and looked in the mirror. My own face looked back at LB. But now, sometimes, when the light hits you might be wondering, was it all real? Did it really happen? Well, let me ask you this. Does it mirror reality, a message from my future self, or simp in the mirror? It's about all the versions of ours. These days, I look at mirrors differently. Not with fear, but with curiosity. Because maybe, just made on glass, maybe they're windows into other paws, and hey, if you ever wake up one morning and don't recognize the face staring back at you in the mirror and wave, you never know, you might be looking. Before I wrap this up, I want to thank all of you for coming on this journey with me. Your comments been absolutely amazing. If you enjoyed this story, isn't the last strange story I have to share. Also, let me know in the comments below if you've ever experienced anything similar, or if you have it time travel, parallel universes, a glitch in the... And remember, Next time you look in a mirror, take a good long look. You never know who might be low. Stay strange, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.